Assalamu alaikum. Sabina, how are you today?
Walaikum assalam. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. I'm so happy to see you. I have not seen you since about, I think, 2008, and we really go back. So we met in Syria in 2000 and I don't even remember, was it five?
I think
2005?
five, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you are here and are you able to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Sabina. I am a mum of two children. I'm born and raised in London, but I've moved to Stockholm, Sweden. I've been living here almost 12 years now. I work in early years. I actually completely restructured my life and now own two businesses. And I run two preschools, and it's super successful. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
MashaAllah. So I'd like to know about your marriage journey. So when you got married the first time around, can you tell us how that happened and how long you were married for?
Yeah, it was a bit of a long, twisted story, but I met my ex-husband at work. It was my first job, my first full-time job. And I actually thought he was an obnoxious man. He used to come in. He needs to rent the space in the place that I was working at, and I was handling the accounts. And I remember complaining to my manager, thinking, "Oh my goodness, that's one client I cannot deal with." But funnily enough, I got to know him. He I guess wooed me in that in that little environment. Asked about my background, my family, and we got acquainted. So he reached out and asked if I would consider marriage. So that was back in 2006, straight after I came back from Syria, where we met. So it was quite early in my career. I was super young as well. Yeah, and I took it to family. They weren't too happy at the beginning because though he was successful work wise, but he hadn't studied, and my family were a bit apprehensive because everybody in my family just naturally had gone through university and had done their masters. And I'm the youngest daughter in my family, so they were a little bit apprehensive, but they agreed, and we got married a year after meeting. Yeah,
And you were married for how long?
yeah. All in all, 4.5 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was a long time actually. Um, I mean, just to give you a bit of background, I think within 5 weeks of the marriage, I realized there was um, big red flags. I would say um, it was a bit of a whirlwind, romantic kind of scenario. I had the most amazing wedding, diamond rings, the whole attire. It was just the full on, the full bash. And then 5 days after we got married, we went on this 6 week honeymoon. We traveled around half of the world, wherever I wanted to go, it was on the list. It was amazing. 5-star hotels, you name it. But I think in that time, I realized there was something a bit different about my ex-husband. It's a bit hard to put my finger on, but I was on a spiritual high after coming back from a year abroad, and I realized he wasn't on that same level, which he had promised me, which we had discussed quite deeply. Um, so yeah, it went on. I think for me, I thought to myself, well, I'm married now. You don't get married to get divorced. And if I was to end the relationship, I would be the first in my entire family. My father's mother's side, nobody had. There's no record of a divorce. So I held on. I thought to myself, no, I'll give it a go. I keep going. Um, I come from a background where there's a lot of men in my life. There's only me and my sister, and I have six brothers. Very strong dad. He was always pushing us to get our driver's license, get our education out of the way, own a home. He used to push us a lot. And then I ended up getting married to a man who didn't want me to work, didn't want me to drive, took away my bank cards. Yeah, so it was a bit of a yeah. I realized quite quickly that I've got myself in a bit of a mess. Um,
So these rules that he enforced, is that contrary to what you had spoken about prior to marriage?
Definitely, absolutely. I mean, I spoke to, you know, there's that saying, isn't it? If you want to get to know somebody, you look at the company they're around. and I got to meet his family. I got to spend time with his friends' wives, and just to get a background. I thought at that time I was 22, and I thought, oh, you know what, I'm really mature for my age, and I've got everything ticked off. Have my education, have my, you know, have a job, and everything's great. And I've traveled extensively, and thought I knew what I was doing. But I think nothing prepares you. I think there's no. I always say to myself, I never put it down as a mistake. I thought to myself, you know what? If I think of it like an experience, that's the only way to get through this.
Mm.
Um, but I think, yeah, and it's a difficult one, because when I used to tell people about my issues, they were like, oh well, he's not hitting you, he doesn't abuse you like that, what are you so uh just get on with it. I think also this whole South Asian cultural thing of women just need to just bear with it and just get on with it, and then, like, oh, have a child, everything will get sorted. Thankfully, I think Allah in so many ways protected me. It's unbelievable. I never got pregnant. I never in that 4.5 years got pregnant. And I just think it was such a blessing. To be honest, I was completely committed to the relationship. He wasn't. After a year, it was constantly like, well, if you don't like it, here's the door. If you don't like it, I can take down the luggage. If you don't like it, then there's always an if and a but and a what. And when I took it to family, again, they were like, well, he's not hitting you. He hasn't done anything to you. But then how do you explain the whole psychological and financial abuse? Because that in our Asian communities, it's like, well, he's providing for you. Well, the only thing he's doing is putting a roof over my head. But I wasn't able to travel, meet my family, be independent. I couldn't hold down a job. Yeah, I was everything that I didn't see myself being, or everything that my father wanted me to be.
It's quite bizarre because I understand if he had mentioned to you what he wanted and you were in agreement with that, but it sounds it's not what happened. And then it's quite strange how some men, they fall in love with the woman, they're drawn to her, attracted to her because she has that spark in her, because she's doing things in her life that she finds fulfilling and gratifying. Then to come along and say, okay, well, now I'm preventing you from doing A, B, and C. It's almost like now caging the bird, and now she's not going to sing like the bird that she was. And then I'm saying it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a tricky one, because I think most men are like that. Most scenarios, divorce scenarios, are like that. But I think my saving grace, I must say, has to be two things. One is that somebody once said to me, you can't stay in the relationship because you pity the person. Because I actually really did care for my ex-husband. I really did. I didn't love him anymore. Definitely not. I think that's something that grows in a relationship, and I think that just collapsed. To be honest, there wasn't any growth there. But I did feel sorry for him. I really did, and part of me thought that maybe if I stay long enough, things might improve. But I'm not sure what my final blow was, where in the end, I was the one who said, you know what, it's enough. It's absolutely enough. And there's the door, and there's your luggage, and there you go. Um, it was a tough time. My family didn't accept it. I didn't tell my mum until 6 months later that I had got divorced. I actually did it by myself. Didn't go to anybody. He left comfortably. Yep.
So did he leave you your marital home?
Yes. So I think it was, yeah, it was a strange time, because every time I approached my family, nobody really supported me. So I thought to myself, well, I clearly remember it was February. And I thought to myself, well, I can't live like this. And I refuse to live like this. Um, and, no matter who I go to, everybody's like, well, I've even heard a classic one was, oh, you've lived with this man for so many years. You've kind of shaped him this way, and some other woman will enjoy your man now. I've even heard that one. That was a classic. But yeah, I just felt like I had to do it. I just felt that it's not. I was still young. This is not happiness for me, and I pulled the plug. And I think when he left, I don't think he realized what he was doing, to be honest, because 6 months later, my family got to find out, and they wanted a sit down discussion, and they looked at him straight in the eyes, and they asked him, is it finished? And he said yes, and there was witnesses. But then straight after that, he tried to get back with me, and I was like, no, it's not happening. So yeah, it took me a long time. I think it took me 2.5 years to pluck up the courage to say that ultimate get out, to be honest. But in that 2.5 years, I re-educated myself, found myself a happy place, secretly got myself a job, passed my driving test, got myself a car, found new friends. So within the marriage, I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this after I get divorced. If he's going to waste my time within the marriage, then you know what? I've got to make a life of myself. Happiness is in my hands.
That's really incredible, Sabina. I'm fascinated because I'm fascinated that you were almost able to detach emotionally from your marital situation, because there are some people that as soon as something is off in the marital home, it affects them very deeply, like everything is off. So they're not as inclined, likely to go ahead and do things for themselves because their emotional state is so contingent on the situation with the spouse. But you were able to just completely detached and just get on with it. Like the fact that you found a happy place within an unhappy marriage. Tell me more about that.
I mean, the thing is, I think one of the things my parents, one of the gifts they gave me was emotional intelligence. Not about financial security, none of that. I mean, that was just a given because I come from a very educated background. Like I've never needed to worry about money. Alhamdulillah, I because I'm one of the youngest as well, so I was super spoiled. Um, but one gift was this emotional intelligence, this emotional strength that no matter what comes your way, you pick yourself up and you get on. That the happiness is in your hands, your relationship to Allah, your whatever you need and want in life, it's down to you as an individual. No one can give you that. We are born alone and we die alone. And I think that's been my core motto, that no matter where I am in this relationship, I was penniless, completely penniless when I divorced. I had no home because technically, he was very clever. You know, he had the house was listed under just him, not me. But if he wanted to be cruel and mean, he could have said, "You get out because this house belongs to me." So I was living in his home by law because the papers weren't in my name, though I paid a deposit towards a house. So it was all very messy. But I thought to myself, you know what? This is all financial. This is nothing that's going to take me. It's nothing that's going to bring me happiness. I have to let go. I let go of him. I let go of the finances, and I thought to myself, I need to find what's right for me and what's good for me. So when he left me, I didn't feel scared because I thought to myself, you know what? I can build myself up. I can find myself again. So I would say maybe a year into the marriage, I started thinking, I think it took me a year in the marriage, I tried. The second year, I was thinking to myself, should I not? The third year, I was like, it's not happening. I need to find my escape route. So I spent the latter 2 years, focusing on myself. Because, I was living in a marriage, but I was feeling super lonely. I could count with one hand how many dinners I've had with him at home. It was that bad. It was so lonely. But yet I was supposed to be his wife, this pretty thing that cooked and cleaned, and it was just ridiculous. And when it came to family affairs, there I was, holding his hand. It was all a big show. Yeah. So yeah, that's where it was, and I thought, that's not a life I want to lead. That's not. I'm no woman here. I'm not a mother, thank God, in that scenario. And I just thought, no, I needed to get out. I think that there were so many signals. Allah had given me so much in that time to realize I needed to be out. So when I left him, I was still 26. And I thought, well, you know what? I still have, inshallah, time on my hands. And I didn't think about wanting to remarry, to be honest. It wasn't part of my agenda or my plan. Of course, my family were pressuring me to settle down again, but I thought it was far more important that I was happy, because I felt if I was miserable and in pain or angry, because I feel anger is quite a horrible thing. It's a dark place. That it's better to be sad than angry. I always say that. And I just felt that I didn't need to be any of those things, because it doesn't bring me any goodness. It's not going to bring me. It's not going to take me further tomorrow, if you know what I mean. So I let go of it a lot.
So post-divorce, what was your emotional journey like?
I think I was most sad about with my family. I felt super lonely. They didn't understand, and partly they didn't want to understand. I think for my mom, it was really hard. I think she didn't accept that I was divorced until I was getting remarried, which was bizarre. But I just thought, everybody has their ways of coping, and that was her way of dealing with her youngest daughter getting divorced. And how do you explain that to people who divorce isn't a conversation we have in my family? So I had to appreciate her stance. And it's important for you to know my father actually, he passed away when I was 17. So he never saw me getting married. So when something like this happened, my mom was like, how am I supposed to deal with this now? How do I cope with such a blow to the family? Because this was the first big um, negative blow that happened in all the generations. So for her, she felt so alone. Um, and I had to respect that. I had to appreciate that everybody has a journey. So though I was feeling really sad with my family, I kind of I was so content with my decision that it didn't matter who was there at my door. It didn't matter anymore. Yeah.
So you didn't grieve your marriage. Was it more a sense of relief? Like, oh, finally I'm out.
I think the thing I grieved most is that everything my father had taught me and my sister to become, I kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't do justice to everything my dad had taught me. But I think the fact that I overcame through so many hurdles, it's because of everything my father had taught me. So yeah, I think it was just a little bit like, everything was going so right in my life, and you needed something not to go right. And unfortunately, it had to be something as big as that, because there were so many people involved. It wasn't like, oh, I lost a bit of money, or I crashed a car or something like that, or I failed in an exam. This had so many people intertwined. And the funniest thing is my ex-husband's family, they found it very hard to let go of me, very hard. So they were calling me all the time. I'm still in touch with them. I still have a very good relationship with them. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of I tried, I really did try in my marriage. And I think the fact that I have such a good relationship with everybody else, it just shows how invested I was. So those things I took from the relationship. I always thought to myself, of course I probably did make mistakes. Of course, it takes two hands to clap, as they say. So maybe I wasn't the right person for my ex-husband. Maybe he was a good guy and I was a good person, but we just weren't good for each other. There's a lot of these maybes, but I just think to myself, I did my best, and that's enough for me. That's enough. And that's why I can close that chapter and focus on the other parts. Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself from that marriage?
Uh, there is only one way of going. When you're at your bottom low, there's only one way up, and that's up. There is, I think, it's hard. I mean, it's super easy for me to say I didn't have children. It's not like I would be homeless if I didn't have a home. I mean, I could always have so many siblings. I have my mum as well. I know it's not an easy advice to give other women in similar situations, but there's no point living in darkness. There's absolutely no point. And happiness is in our hands. It's in our own hands, and that's really important to know. And it's not anybody else's responsibility but ourselves. And that's one thing I've learned, that whatever we have in life, that it's just consider as an experience, and not mistakes. Because yeah, tomorrow's another day.
So how long were you single until you were acquainted with who then became your second husband?
Yeah, I think it was roughly about 2.5 years. Yeah, 2.5 to 3 years. Yeah, and it
How-
was totally unexpected.
Yeah, so now how did you meet?
We met through mutual friends. So I completely reshuffled. I used to work in IT, completely rechanged my process in life and educated myself again. Started doing training projects in Switzerland. And I was involved in this amazing project with young Muslims where I think like 90 different young Muslims from around Europe had gathered together. And there was a group of Swedish girls which I connected with instantly. And they came to London. I went to Sweden, and this was over like a couple of years. And just to kind of long story short, I met my now husband at one of the parties. So one of the girls was getting graduated, and I met him across the floor. And I remember they said that, oh, all Swedes are staunch atheists, the generations of atheists. So, just had a nice, amicable conversation about life and studies and whatnot while we were having dinner. And then I left that situation after about 10 minutes. Lo and behold, he had asked my friend about me, and I had asked her about him. It was very, very innocent, but she played Cupid a little bit. Only to find out he was actually thinking of becoming Muslim. So, because that's a big criteria for me. I always said that no matter who I marry, they have to have a sound level of Islam and be spiritually inclined like me, because that's super important. So yeah, crazily, this was in January 2012. By April, we were engaged. So it was like, yeah. I think you come to a point in life where you know if somebody's the right person. Yeah, I moved complete different countries for in pursuit of this marriage, and I do regret living in Sweden, but I don't regret marrying my husband. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Sweden's quite a tough country to live in when you're a socialite. It's
How does the dynamic compare to your first dynamic?
You know what? You're going to find this really funny and ironic, but I always think that, I mean, now being married to two different men from two different cultures, two countries, I've come to the conclusion that actually all men are the same. There's just different degrees of everything, funnily enough. You know what? I thought long and hard about my ex husband, and I think he was just very misunderstood. And I think he misunderstood himself a lot. I really do pity him. I think he's a good man. I don't, like I said, I don't think I made a mistake because I saw that genuine side of him. I just think he's an extremely lost person. And I think the more I understood his upbringing and why he has come to where he is, it makes sense why to be honest, he'd probably never be happy in a relationship. There's some people, unfortunately, it is like that, and sadly, he still isn't married today, or in a relationship, or um, but yeah, I would say that there is no green grass. I mean, every marriage has ups and downs. It's how you tackle it, and it's how the energies, the two energies of the man and the woman come together. It really is that. Um, so, you might think, oh, I've got it. I know exactly what kind of a man I want. There is no perfect man. There isn't. There is no perfect woman. We aren't perfect ourselves. Different situations bring out a different aspect of our personality as well. Like, it's not until I had a baby that I realized, wow, I could be very hormonal. I didn't know, nobody talks about these things, for instance, as an example. But I think yeah, my husband really compliments me. My now husband really compliments me, which my ex-husband didn't. Not to say like I said, no man is perfect. My brothers, I grew up with 6 brothers. I wouldn't say they're perfect either, but I just think it's the energies. They have to match. And yeah, that's so I didn't match with my ex-husband.
I found it in the first marriage that you didn't feel emotionally safe in a way, because as you said, you had a roof over your head, but your emotional, maybe even spiritual needs were not being met. So in your current marriage, it seems as if you do feel safe. The dynamic is different. Would you say that you're more friends? Would you say friends is the right word, or what would you say?
I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely. I mean, when I think about traveling, we are avid travelers in my family. We love to travel, and I think to myself, of all the friends that I travel with, my husband's the best travel partner. He really is. He is such a. I don't. My travels aren't complete if he's not with me. Honestly, it just doesn't feel as if I've got the best out of that country or wherever I've been, if my husband's not with me. So I do think friendship's a good one. Um, no matter what, no matter how happy you are in a relationship, it's so important that us women and men too. I think we have to remember men can be vulnerable in relationships too. It's so important that I go back to this, that you find your own happy place. That yes, I'm emotionally secure, but I was also in that previous marriage, to be honest, because that's why I plucked up the courage to say stop and it's enough, and that I'll do this alone. I think it's not the emotional security, it's the fact that I think I had this idea of what marriage should be like when I first got married. And everything was just wiped away. And in my second marriage, unfortunately for my husband, I came with walls up a little bit. But I'm also very quick to let them down because they're not deep. They're not deep wounds that I had. And I'm very lucky for that. But I'm very open. I think it's really important to be transparent to a point. There's no point burdening your next marriage with your baggage. Isn't? I think you should say enough to keep a happy place, but not say too much, because then, yeah, I just think it's not necessary to say it all. I think um, I don't know why I would think that, but in my situation, I'd never felt good about saying everything. I always thought that it's very important to say what you need to say on a need to know basis, because there might be other situations where you need to bring something else up. But it's also a way to just kind of, yeah, that's probably my way of coping, I guess. Maybe parking memories that's not needed to bring up. It's not necessary. Um, but the reality is that us women, you need to, because at the end of the day, today I have an amazing life. I have a husband, I have children, I have a beautiful home, I have a career. But tomorrow I might not have any of this. My husband might pass away, God forbid. Something might happen to me, something might happen to my children. You always have to be prepared yourself. You always have to find your grounds, your comfort, you know you can't depend on other people for that. You cannot, no matter how happy you are in a relationship. So though you're referring to emotional security and stuff, yes, it's all there. Financial security, everything's there that wasn't there in my first marriage. But I will still not let go. I will still find my own pathway. Always. I'm still studying. I'm doing another 3-year program. I'm always developing myself. I'm always trying to find ambitions for myself, trying to find something new friends, new hobby, because that's what also attracts my husband to me. And that's what attracts me to me. And also for the sake of my children. I mean, particularly my daughter, what am I teaching her? You know, because the moment I let go, the moment I think to myself, well, I don't need to work that hard. Well, of course, as long as you enjoy it, that's important. But the moment us women, we let go, we're not teaching the generations to come of how to be, how to respect the self, how to have self-esteem and to love the self. So yeah, I still, in this marriage, I'm super happy, but I'm still me. I am me, number one, because I am nobody if I'm not me. And that's quite important, definitely.
And what is it like being in a cross-cultural marriage? The challenges of that?
No challenge, I would say. I don't think there's a major challenge. I think there's more of a challenge for my husband, actually, because he's lived in a particularly white homogenous society. Of course, he has friends from other backgrounds, but I've lived abroad for extensive periods of time, and I speak several languages as well. So it's a little bit different. So I think he found it a bit harder than I did. And it's also, I've been born and raised in Islam, which he hasn't. So there's a lot more new for him than there was for me, for sure.
Sabina, are you able to mention other points that make a functional, healthy, productive marriage?
You know, I think that, to be honest, there isn't so much. I think we overcomplicate marriage. I really do think that. I think that as long as it's so important that you find yourself. You know, I have a sister-in-law who gave up her study, her life, like her career and everything, just to be home as a housewife. And my brother's a doctor, and fine, you know, they live comfortably. But you know, what happens when the kids grow up? What happens when you get older? What do you have for yourself? What can you discuss at the dinner table when it's just you and your husband sitting across one another? It's so important to find that energy, that love. That the only way love grows is for you to grow too, you know. And love evolves. So should you. You need to evolve, and it's all interconnected, to be honest. Yeah, and I think personally, yeah, I would say don't overcomplicate marriage. Don't have set criterias, and don't have this needs to happen, that needs to, oh, look at this person. No individuals, you know, no couple is the perfect couple, and no, you know, there's no greener grass on the other side, as they say. You have to make it yourself. You have to make your happiness yourself, and how you do it through your own hobbies or interests, or whatever it may be, or traveling. I mean, traveling is a big part of our relationship, to be honest. I think that's our happy place, because otherwise we're like flatmates, because we work so hard. And I think I started my business 2 years ago, so I'm always working. Hence the reason I can talk to you on a Sunday evening because it's usually my working hour. But when we travel, that's when you will see our true selves really come out. We're funny, we're humorous, we crack jokes, nothing's ever taken seriously. And it's great. It's really great that we can let go, and I can be vulnerable, I can be strong, I can be angry, I can be everything in my safe space. And he too. And I think that's so important to have that, because we're so conformed by social norms when you step outside the door. But when you want to come home, you want to relax, you want to be yourself. But it's also, yeah, I think it's also give and take. It's a lot of give and take, and to pick your fights. I think that's the classic one. But yeah, I think not to be so tough on ourselves as well. I think that's another very important factor. Well, you know, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to say, to be honest, but I think to not talk about what's already been said, I would say not to complicate marriage, like everything in life, to be honest.
Mhm. Thank you, Sabina. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I wish you and your family all the best and a blessed and beautiful Ramadan.
Yes, and to you too.